मसाले तो बहुत हैं, पर प्रकृति की गोद से खास चुने मसाले जिनकी ताजगी, खुशबू और स्वाद रहे बरकरार, ऐसे उम्दा मसाले बनाते हैं सिर्फ कैच। कैच का कोई मैच नहीं, 100%।
When Shabnam Khan, our next speaker, signed up for a photo shoot as part of an art project in college, she hadn't imagined that the photographs would be plastered on billboards and advertisements all over the world. Today, at the Times Lit Fest, Shabnam will be launching her part memoir, part travelogue, titled How I Accidentally Became a Global Stock Photo, wherein she takes us on an unpredictable journey far from her family home in South Africa. In conversation, we have renowned author, columnist, and journalist Natasha Badwar. Keep watching.
Welcome to the Times Lit Fest 2021. I'm Natasha Badwar, and with me today I have a very special author, Shabnam Khan. Over the next 45 minutes, I hope that the charm of Shabnam, the best of Shabnam, will in some way be reflected in our conversation to inspire you to pick up her most amazing memoir called How I Accidentally Became a Global Stock Photo. It's a name that intrigues, a title that intrigues. And there's a lot more besides this amazing story in this memoir. In fact, when I was reading this book, the sense I got after a while was Shabnam is like a princess in her own fairy tale that she's writing herself. Determined to discover her place in the world, she embarks on a series of accidental adventures with an endearing nervousness as well as a courage, a firm resolve to make things work, however much fear tugs at her heart, however much her own sense of, set of anxieties kind of travel with her. She is determined to unravel the greatest mystery of all, the enigma of the self. And as one reads the book, as one goes on these journeys with Shabnam, where she's very, very candid about what she's feeling, what she's hoping for, what she's experiencing, in a way, it triggers many memories for the reader. It makes you want to tell your own story. It reminds you of all the moments when you have been at an airport and feeling clueless, when you are going away from home and wondering whether it is the right thing to do, when you are landing up in a fresh new place, among strangers, thinking that this is the end of your life, but actually discovering that magic is right there at the end of the street. With this, I'll call in Shabnam. Shabnam, would you like to start by reading an excerpt from this book?
Firstly, thank you so much, Natasha. That was such a wonderful introduction. I'm so honored to be speaking to you. And it's just really touched me that I get to launch this book in India with you. So thank you for that. And for the nice words about the book. So I'm going to read a small part of the book that the chapter called I Was Supposed to Be a Tragedy. As you know, and I'm telling the readers now, I'm the fourth daughter in a family of 4 girls. And I'll let the chapter tell you the rest of the story. So I was supposed to be a tragedy. I am the last born of 4 daughters in an Indian family, which obviously means my birth was a tragedy. Well, at least for those who congratulated my mother with, "I'm so sorry," or "better luck next time," or who said things amongst themselves like it was a shame that it was a girl again. Now, I don't have kids, so I'm not sure what it's like, but can you imagine carrying a human being inside you for the better part of a year and going through blood, sweat, and tears to get it out, only to hear, "better luck next time"? It should have been my first clue that people in this world I had just come into could be totally bonkers. I mean, if it had been me, I would have probably karate chopped them in the throat before they even got to next time. But perhaps this is why it's better I don't have kids. Boys, as we know, are the pride and joy of a family. They're supposed to be the protectors and providers and symbolize wealth and strength. They can do no wrong. If it sounds bitter, it's because I am. Because we all know daughters are the ones who will file your toenails, bake you a birthday cake, make your doctor's appointment, pull out your ear hair, and look after you when you're old. They're the ones who will do the things that matter. It's those spoiled boys who won't pick up a single dish, who play video games all day and abandon you when they get a wife, who are the real disappointment. Yet somehow daughters always get the worst rap. They are the burdens to bear, the carriers of shame, the consolation prize in our communities. I mean, baby girls have always had a bad deal. We were literally being buried, abandoned, and aborted from Arabia across to China for the last few hundred years. In 1990, it was estimated that Asia was missing 100 million fewer women due to female infanticide. In my community today, it's been toned down to snarky remarks and disappointed glances, despite the fact that our beloved prophet, peace be upon him, promised heaven to those who have had daughters and show them support and kindness. This should have also been my second clue that in my new world, not all Muslims understood what Islam was about. My parents, thankfully, never seemed fazed by another daughter. My father is the most positive person in the world, and my mother is a cool cat. So although they come from a community that prides boys over girls, my father said all he did was count my fingers and toes and raise his hands to thank God for a healthy baby. So I grew up with parents who loved their daughters in a house full of sisters, and I have to say it was pretty special. My mother, who had grown up with 7 sisters, was pleased to be surrounded by girls again, and she enjoyed dressing us up, teaching us how to be proper ladies and chatting with us over cups of tea. My father, an architect who was always more in touch with his creative side and softer side, delighted in daughters and had candid chats to us about womanly issues, including our period, which I didn't realize until much later was very open-minded for a man from his reserved generation and community. Having so many sisters meant you never really felt alone. There was always someone to tell a secret to, someone to borrow clothes from, someone to split a meal with, someone to blame, and someone to fight with. Most importantly, there was someone else in the world who understood what it was like to be a girl in the world. And I just have to say, that's not the end of the chapter, but I end the chapter by saying, right now, all you need to know is that I was supposed to be a tragedy, but I was not.
That's such a beautiful beginning to your book. And in a way, it has all the qualities that make reading your book such a pleasure. You know, there'll be a couple of lines that will tug at your heart because you're bearing your own pain. And immediately afterwards, you'll crack a joke about how you would have karate chopped them as an infant baby. You know, so you will touch a raw nerve, but you will also then immediately lighten up the room. It seems to be a necessity for you when you write your story. How would you kind of look at that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Natasha. I don't know, I think even you have this approach to life, but I think as you get older, you realize that, you know, bad things are going to happen and they're going to come and you have to find a way to deal with them. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck feeling bad about the situation and just holding on to bitterness and anger. And I'm slowly learning, I think, because I've been surrounded by good people and I read books, and I think I'm slowly learning that you have to laugh to get through situations. Otherwise, it's just going to suck. Life is going to suck. So you have to find the funny in the situation, and you have to look for the good moments and hold on to them and take that knowledge with you to go forward in life. So I will talk about the bad moments, but I also want to share that you can get over those moments with time and with a bit of humor, you know. So I think that's the approach that I find that is making life so good after so long. If you can just laugh at these things and try to move on, you know, and that's, like you say, what the book is about. If, you know, you start seeing the humor in situations to help you go forward?
Yeah. So I will share with the readers what my own connection with Shabnam is. I followed Shabnam on Twitter almost a decade ago, perhaps. And Shabnam was blogging from South Africa. I was blogging in New Delhi. And both of us were following Roger Ebert, who, kind of, because he discovered my Twitter account and began to retweet it, I ended up getting connected with a lot of writers, a lot of people across the world who perhaps were all looking for the same thing. They were sensitive souls, trying to make sense of the world in their own way, in their own words, trying to redefine stereotypes, trying to redefine situations. Because, like you say in your first line, I was supposed to be a tragedy. There is so much social presupposition, they're constantly told you're supposed to be this, you're supposed to feel like this. You can be happy if you have, if your first child's a daughter, you must be disappointed if your third child's a daughter and the fourth one is a tragedy. And around that time, I saw your Twitter account. I found your writing extremely poetic. What also connected us was that my blog was called My Daughter's Mom, which later became my book, My Daughter's Mom. A lot of that came from my own experience of raising 3 little daughters in a society where I was shocked to discover that in the 21st century, people still held the kind of regressive ideas about gender that you describe. And to be honest, till I actually became the mother of 3 daughters, I was not aware that I was surrounded by such blatant misogyny. And you, of course, are the daughter. So it didn't take you very long to discover that you're seen in a certain way. And that contradicts with how you see yourself. And what are the tools and the devices that you're going to find throughout your life that allow you to make yourself visible to yourself as well as to the rest of the world? And I think a lot of your very delicate poetic writing comes from that space. And I know that a lot of my writing emerged from the pain I felt of, this kind of rejection that I saw in the eyes of other people around me. When I was living the most beautiful moments of my life, I was being told that this was rather unfortunate for me. And that didn't make any sense. So I had to assert my own truth. And you're doing that as well throughout your book. And I think that's what kind of makes us resonate a lot with each other's stories. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there are 2 adventures in your book where I met you briefly. When you're coming back from Kashmir in India, we meet in New Delhi. And when you're in China, making your surreptitious trip to Korea, I think, we meet in Shanghai. And today we meet again. So, in a way, there are these connections that have kept us going. You did start off as a fiction writer. Perhaps that's what you saw yourself as, a person who will, create stories. But with this book, you have moved to personal writing. How has this journey been for you?
Yeah. Firstly, thank you for taking us through that journey of our journey together, because that has been very special. You meet people 10 years ago and you think you keep in touch erratically, but we have been, I think, at poignant parts of our life in touch, and like you say, you were there for when I had the China adventure, and when I was in Delhi, I came to your house. So I'm so glad for that. And now you're part of this journey. So moving to your question about fiction and writing personal stories, I didn't expect to write personal stories. I thought I would just be writing fiction. I was working on my second novel, and I just referred to myself as a fiction writer. This book was very unexpected. I thought sometime in the future I'll write about my life, like maybe later on, and because I was sharing all these strange stories on Twitter about these adventures I was having, in China, or about my stock photo, Pan Macmillan in South Africa, the publisher here, asked me to put it together in a collection in a book. And I thought, oh, okay, we'll put all these funny stories together. And that's what I thought it would be. But when I started to write it, I realized, oh, I'm going on this adventure in my life, actually. I'm reflecting on growing up and being a daughter, and then traveling alone as a woman, and being nervous and being anxious. And I didn't even realize what an anxious person I was until I wrote this book. It was like a revelation to me, because I figured out things about myself, which I'm sure you did as well when you were writing. And so that was the really wonderful part. And I think so it forced me to do personal writing, because I didn't expect to write this book. I just got this offer from the publisher saying, why don't you put these stories together and let's see where it goes. She was very open to me making the book what I wanted it to be. And I didn't know in the beginning what I wanted it to be. I was just like, it's funny stories. And I was like, oh no, it's actually about becoming brave and trying to figure out yourself, and figure out who you are, and becoming soft, or choosing softness, And so I didn't expect to be doing personal writing, but I'm so glad, because it's led me more onto this path of discovery, and which I hope by sharing it will help others, as you mentioned at the beginning, to make them reflect on their journeys, And so, yeah, now I guess I do personal writing as well.
In my own journey as a writer who writes personal stories, one of the unexpected gifts has been that the writing has revealed myself to me. The writing has been a place of healing. And I think that, I know, because I followed your journey, that you did see yourself as a fiction writer, but you did also have this blog where you were far more personal. And we all felt our blogs would forever remain, those safe, secret places, which is why a lot came out there that would not have come out in a physical diary or in a published piece. But my question to you is about how writing is also a form of self-therapy. And in your book, you write about your dark moments. You write about being, wondering whether you're depressed, and then you write your way through it all. So yeah, share a little about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the writing really helped me reflect over the trajectory of my life, and I didn't realize it, but in China, I was depressed. I was lonely and sad and depressed for a long time. And now I can see it, but at that point, I couldn't see it at all. And then I realized also that I was doing that was 2016, I was doing some kind of healing then that I didn't even understand. I was going through a lot of grief. I had to let go of someone that I liked, and I didn't understand what I was going through. But now, like, I always think retrospect is such a great tool, because now I can look back at it and think, although I was going through all that grief and that sadness, I was coming back to myself, and I was I was like buying flowers for myself and drying these flowers and hanging them up. I don't even understand at that point what I was doing, but now I can look back at it and I say I was learning how to be soft with myself. I was just buying all these flowers for myself. I was actually literally giving myself hugs and patting myself on the back, like I was like, it's okay that you're going through all this. It's fine. You tried your best. It didn't work out. It's okay. And so I can only see it now when I look back at those pieces that fit into a puzzle. And then that was like the turning point for me. Things got so much better. I got healthier. When I was depressed, for years, I was coughing all the time. I couldn't understand why, but I had this constant cough. And I was quite sickly, I would say. But from that turning point, when I learned to look at myself and be softer with myself and not so hard, because I'd be like, oh, you're so stupid, you're so silly. And when I turned it around and I started saying, you were so loving and you were so kind, that changed everything, that moment changed, because then I started seeing myself as a friend. And when you start seeing yourself as a friend, that changes everything, because you, at the end of the day, you have yourself only. You're going to be on that journey with yourself, right? So writing helped me see that, and it enforced that idea, so I could take it forward even now. I'm like, oh, you see how much your life changed when you saw yourself as a friend and when you were softer with yourself. See how much more positive and happier you are now. You feel better. Yeah, so the writing helped me see the path for myself, and hopefully takes me on that path. Yeah.
There's also a role that solitude plays in your life.
Yeah.
You've written a little bit about being stuck at home in these pandemic months, which have now kind of almost going to become 2 years soon.
Yeah.
You've written about your sisters leaving home, and then you're now alone at home with your parents. You were alone in China when you went for the fellowship. You had a lot of time to yourself in the mountains of Doda when you came to India to teach in a school. And these are moments when you are feeling estranged from the world around you, but they also then lead you, like you said, eventually to discovering your own courage and your own softness. What would you say is the quality of solitude one needs for it to become a gift rather than a burden?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. I don't know. I hope I try to share a little bit of the experience in the book. It can be so lonely being by yourself so much. And I've been more or less single my whole life, and that's a long time now to be single. So you really have to want your own company. And sometimes it's so lonely, but other times it's so refreshing, because then you get the opportunity to get to know yourself, which I don't know. I think you will find it in moments of like extreme joy and extreme grief. But it's a mixed bag. One day you wake up and you're just like, I wish I had someone next to me. I wish I had someone with me on this journey. And other times you're just like, I have myself and that's enough, So it changes. But I think the key is to want to be in your own company, because a partnership and company is never always guaranteed, later in life or whatever, there are points in your life.
In company all the time and still be extraordinarily
exactly. So you have to, I think the key is you have to know who you are and like yourself, because there will be many moments when you're only with yourself, and then if you don't like your own company, life would be so terrible. So I think it's about cultivating a relationship with yourself. And as I feel like as you go on in life, you know what you like and what you don't like. You know the situations that you prefer and you don't prefer. I mean, you're very much that person. I also think, Natasha, you've evolved so much. I've also seen you in the last 10 years. And I think we speak up more now, and we know. Whereas 10 years ago, I'd be so nervous, I wouldn't be able to say no to anything. And now I can, So I think you get to know yourself, you know what your limits are, you know what makes you happy and what makes you sad. Like now I'm at the stage where if I don't like you, I'm not going to be in that situation. I will step out from that situation with anyone, or I know when to say no, when to speak up a little bit more. So I think it's really about cultivating a relationship with yourself. And that's how you can handle solitude, because there's a difference between loneliness and solitude, So, yeah.
It's a, you know, there's a very it's very candid, very refreshing how you touch upon the experience of being single in a world where love and companionship and romantic love is valued, you know, is given so much of a premium, even though all love stories have, you know, got their limits. They've got they're riddled with pain, with misunderstanding. We rarely get enough space to talk about reclaiming the self within the love story. And because what you've done is actually take the experience of your life and you know, and turn it into the story that that is so beautiful to listen to. And one of the ways in which you've done it is the modern love article that you have that's recently been published in the New York Times, where you talk both about self-love, discovering how to be, you know, how to experience love even if you are single, as well as discovering what it is that makes the marriage and the partnership of your parents work. How did that evolve? How long did you take to write that?
But you know, I always read the Modern Love column, and I love the stories that they share there. And I remember the editor, you know, I was reading up how to write a Modern Love article, you know, because I felt like I had a lot of stories to tell, even though I'd been single, but I was like, I have love stories to tell. Certainly, I'm sure mine's count, you know. And one of the advice I remember that stood out was tell your most important story. And I was like, this is my most important story right now at this stage in my life. This is the most important story. You know, it's not to say that I'm a person who wants to be single, who likes to be single. I grew up wanting to fall in love. I wanted to experience that, the fireworks and the joy and, you know, the excitement. It's I'm not saying, oh, I choose to be this way, but life happens. And, you know, for some reason or the other, I've ended up being single in a culture, in a society where your whole existence quite often is placed within where you stand in society, whether you have a husband or not, whether you have children or not, you know. But I didn't feel like that should lessen my story. I felt like that was the reason why I should tell my story, because that's important too, you know, that experience. And even though I'm single, I get to be with people who are my parents, who are so in love, and they show me every day what good love is and what it is to grow old with someone. And I know from watching them that it's wonderful, but it's not perfect all the time. Obviously, you know, you have those moments, but for me, it's so interesting because I get to watch that, what I might not have, or what I might have, I'm not sure, but I get to watch it at least, even if it's not mine, you know, so yeah.
One of the things you shared was how you didn't quite see this book till a publisher approached you and saw, you know, and try and convinced you that there was a book here. How has it been for you ever since the book has come out? Because it's been out in South Africa and in other countries for a while now. And I know as an author of personal writing that sometimes people tell you what you have written, which is more insightful than what I myself may be able to see in my writing. And I'm wondering what kind of feedback you've received ever since the book's been out.
Well, one of the nicest things that has happened is that when I wrote this book and when I realized what it was, me sharing my personal stories and insight into me, one of the things I was nervous about was that people would look at me strangely because I'm sharing things like my fears and my anxiety and about being single and about getting my heart broken. And I was just so, you know, I do feel I hold back even. I feel like there were times when I could have given more even, but I was so nervous about it. And I was so scared of how people would perceive me that I was very nervous before the book came out. And then when it came out, there were people, especially women, young women, or, you know, who would come to me and tell me, thank you so much for telling the story, because this is my story. I'm going through the same thing. I'm also having this experience, and I'm also scared, and I'm also nervous, and I also haven't found anyone. Or when I travel this, or even not, I'm not even single people. I'm talking about married people or people with partners. They're like, I relate so much to your story. Even men. And so the wonderful thing about sharing the story was they felt less alone, and I felt less alone. Instead of feeling estranged, instead of feeling like I had isolated myself from society by sharing the story, I actually felt more part of it. And so that was the wonderful thing that I didn't expect, like this exchange of experiences where we both understood one another, and I felt like I had a place, and then they felt like they had a place by me sharing the story. And that was really a nice experience, a knowledge that came out of this writing this book.
Yeah. I mean, that is what makes personal writing so special in a sense. You start from the kernel of your own story, but if you do it with deep honesty and with humor, what you end up telling is a very universal story. When people read your modern love column, everybody's thinking about their parents, and and seeing those moments in any couple that they know like that, or in their own marriage as well. And we do tend to feel that our experience is so unique, nobody will get it. For example, I'm a Hindu woman married to a Muslim man, working in Delhi with a home in the village, raising 3 daughters. And it seems to me like this is not intersecting with anybody else.
Yes.
Now you have to just live your highs and lows by yourself, because, you chose this. But when you tell those stories, you discover really literally how universal the sense of loss, disappointment, the reclaiming of joy, the finding of beauty in the little moments, how universal it is, how much each one of us is looking for that magic. And now your book is coming to India. Are there any plans of actually having Shabnam over in this country?
Well, firstly, I just want to touch on something you were saying, and I am sure you find this with your writing as well, because your writing is the same, it's about finding the universality in the experience. Was that I always forget this, is that the more specific you are, the more universal the writing becomes, and I don't know how I keep forgetting that, but the more you talk about like being a Hindu woman married to a Muslim man, or being the youngest daughter, the more you get into the details, that's how the more people relate to it. And it's astonishing, because you would think the detail is the thing that would exclude people. But yeah, just to add to that. And in terms of coming to India, I don't know what's happening with COVID. I would love to come. I would love to see you and other people, but I don't know when that's happening. We'll see how things go, but I would love to be there for some events, and just to meet people. I haven't been to India for a long time, and we need to have a new adventure, so I hope so.
No, and the book the book is actually an adventure. We want to see you and the book travel as you're doing with this. This may be virtual, but the fact is that you're bringing the book to a country that you have a connection with, which brings me to questions of identity. That's also something that you touch upon a lot. The fourth daughter, the Indian, the South African Muslim of Indian descent. And then it's much more specific, even within the city in which you grow up, the neighborhood that you belong to versus the neighborhood that you don't belong to, the school you go to. And yet, I was actually in the middle of a family get together a couple of days ago, reminded of the story of little Shabnam buying shoes with her mother and looking for the best discounts, and also looking for something that would make her feel cool. And I was narrating it to younger nieces and nephews about how much of a universal experience that is in everybody's life growing up. And it seems like, is that the kind of story you put in a book? But when you do, there are so many connections. There's so much else you're able to tell by being candid about the things that you're not supposed to talk about.
Yeah, and you know, Natasha, even just to touch on what you're saying about growing up in South Africa, and I live in the same house that I talk about in the beginning of the book. You know, because of apartheid, the areas were separated. So we had Indian areas and we had white areas and black areas, and the roads were different in each area, you know. And so the area that I live in, the roads are quite narrow because it was formerly an Indian area. And my whole life growing up, I mean, my whole childhood, at least until I was probably about 9, I thought South Africa is full of Indians, because the school that I was, you know, and I mentioned that in the book, even the school I was going to had Indian people, the areas, all my neighbors were Indian. We'd go for Indian functions. I'd miss, you know, for me, I was just like, oh, okay, so we're all Indian, you know. Maybe until I was a bit older, I realized, oh no, okay, we're very much a minority here. But that was because of the way the area was designed. And so, you know, you talk about identity, that was like, for me, I just, for a long time, it was like, oh, this is I'm an Indian version of, I'm an Indian, but I'm in South Africa. But it didn't occur to me that the bigger picture until I was older, you know. And I only started mixing with other races, really, I have to say, when I started university. It was strange for my family, you know. And it was a lot about to do with the culture and the society, but also to do with the bigger picture of how the areas were shaped and the schools we had to go to. And it really shaped my identity. And that's what I tried to talk about in the book as well. How, as I got older, I thought I was South African. But when I was young, it was just like my grandparents supported India, watching the games, you know, and they'd always talk about like the homeland, to go home, and we'd only eat Indian food. And so I very much felt like I was an Indian, even though technically I was not, because that was the way I grew up, you know, and that informs a lot of what's in the book as well.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of time left. We have so much to talk about, but we must touch upon the title of this book. And, you know, it's connected to identity in a sense, because here is this face of Shabnam Khan that has represented so many ethnic identities in the world. When your stock photo gets used again and again throughout the world. And for you, it was a bit of a misadventure when it started, because it was happening without your permission. And I want you to share how you have dealt with the fame that's thrust upon you, you know, the one that you didn't choose when you became a global stock photo, and the fame that a writer seeks because she wants her words to reach people.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. So I think when it happened, I was so overwhelmed, especially when the story kind of went viral, because I'd shared it on Twitter about what happened to me. And I got so overwhelmed with all the attention. Like, people were saying, how could you sign this document without understanding, and you gave away your photo? You know, it's so ridiculous. And then there were other people saying, you should sue this photographer, you should sue everybody, because your photo is being used in all these adverts without your permission. You know, you didn't even know that your photo was being used. And I think that attention was so overwhelming. You know, you think it in your life, sometimes you're like, oh, I'm going to be famous one day, you know. But this was not, your question is so interesting, because this was not the way I wanted it. I felt stupid at the same time. And I felt like, you know, people just wanted a sensational story. So many journalists were contacting me to get the story, and basically, you know, headlines bearing like, this girl gave away her face without even realizing. And I saw comments like, she's a writer, doesn't she know she had to read the contract? Like, she's so stupid, you know. And it was just so overwhelming that I couldn't deal with it. And I left social media for like a few days, and I just stopped doing interviews, and I just didn't want to talk about it. But then like later on in retrospect, I realized like, you know, it will help if it can help somebody not get themselves in the same situation, then I should at least share the story as well. And but yeah, for a long time, I didn't feel like that was the kind of fame I wanted. I didn't, because, you know, it wasn't like I was getting known for this amazing, wonderful photo even. It was like I was in acne adverts and teeth whitening, and you know, somebody said I broke out into acne because I was pregnant, and it was just, it wasn't the way I wanted it. And you know, if I, this idea of like sharing my stories, I wanted it to be shared for me. And so that's what the book is kind of. It's like me reclaiming my identity and who I am, and showing you this is who I am. If you want to know my story, then know this story, you know? And that's what I think the book is about, reclaiming what I felt like I lost in that moment. Yeah.
That's beautifully put. Shabnam, have one of the thoughts that came to me when I was reading your book was Shabnam has an alternate career in being a stand-up comic. You know,
So
such
funny.
a disarming humor, such a quick-wittedness, you know, an ability to convert a tragedy, something sad, into a little joke that elevates your you know, feelings at that moment, but also kind of lightens up.
I know it's a funny book, but Natasha, I really don't think I'm a stand-up comedian. The book gave me the space to look for the jokes and make the jokes, and the book gave me a lot of time to like put things together. But in real life, I honestly feel like I'm not a funny person. It thrills me so much that people say your book is so funny, you're so funny, because I don't really think I am funny. Um, but I'm glad the book gave me the space for people to perceive me that way, and that's great. But stand-up comedian, I don't think I could do that, Natasha.
We'll talk about this in a couple of years from now. You're also an artist, Shabnam. We must touch upon that. Although you didn't design the cover of your own book, I mean, you didn't draw the cover of your own book. It is designed by you, you know, in this, I mean, it is, the photograph is taken by you. That's an amazing story as well, that it's a self-portrait. But you have designed other people's books. You've created art that people have hung on the walls in their home.
I've done art for you.
Oh yes, you've done art for one of my columns, absolutely, and I cherish that mango you made for me. How does this intersect? I mean, you know, what do you? There's such a meditative quality to your art, and there's a poetic quality to your writing. How, you know, talk to us about discovering these two artists who dwell together in you.
Yeah, I think I don't know how they intersect, but I know I can't do the one when I'm doing the other. So if I'm writing a lot, I can't draw at that point. And if I'm drawing a lot, I can't write at that point, because I think they both take a certain creative energy, and they both tell stories in different ways. I sometimes feel like the drawing doesn't limit me the way the writing does. You know, the drawing, I have room to, like, if I can't put the words to it, I can do it in the drawing, the dots or the spreading of the lines, or, you know, I can express something that I can't make the words for. And so sometimes I do feel a lot more freer in the drawing than with the writing, because the writing, you know, you have to craft and craft and craft until it's razor sharp and it makes the point that it wants to make. And that's the best way to get to the reader, is to like cut them open with that sharp sentence. Whereas with the drawing, there's just so much more movement and space to feel free in a way. And there's room for mistakes with the drawing, but I don't feel like this. The writing takes a lot more craft for me. That's what I find. Yeah.
Yeah, I am. That resonates a lot with me, because I'm a filmmaker and a writer, And I find that when I'm making films, I can't write. And when I'm writing, I stop making films. So it is something about the creative energy that is needed and the kind of expression each one allows you to do. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I know that that is also an experience and I envy people who can just switch, who seem to be able to switch. I mean, you never know what one is struggling with. For example, your writing seems so much at ease. It seems to flow so easily. It's so quick. One can read it so quickly. My daughter read the book start to finish yesterday. And
which I'm so happy about. I'm so thrilled. I love your daughters, and I'm so thrilled that they read it.
And yet to craft that, to reach that point, you know that there's a struggle, there's a deep dark hole that one has to kind of tunnel through before one reaches this resplendent age.
Well, there's that saying, good writing is good reading is hard writing. I'm saying it wrong, but that's the effect of it. Is like, if it reads easily, you must know it was very hard to write.
Absolutely. So welcome to India with the book.
Thank you.
And welcome, to the Times Lit Fest. I hope that those people who have heard this conversation and kind of where we touched upon some of the stories that you reflect in the book, that you write about in the book, will want to know more. And I certainly encourage readers to pick up this book. There's a little bit of India in it. There's a little bit of the global person that each one of us, is struggling to be. There's a little bit of the personal for everybody in it. Shabnam, I'm going to ask you to speak the last words. What would you?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for having me. Thank you for the conversation, and to the Times Literature Festival as well. It's great to have this platform and to bring my book into India.
Thank you for watching today's sessions. Please join us next on Saturday between 5 to 7 p.m. to watch our upcoming 3 sessions. We will kickstart the session with authors Yael Oladal, Claire McIntosh and Bilal Siddiqui, who will discuss the ins and outs of writing thrillers. In conversation will be author Kulpreet Yadav. Next, we have author Preeti Shenoy discussing her latest book, The Magic Mindset: How to Find Your Happy Space. In conversation with author Madhuri Banerjee. Lastly, we have a session titled Revisiting the Horrors of 1984 Pogrom, which will feature author Sarpreet Singh and Arjun Gained in conversation with Radhika Oberoi. Also, do not forget to talk about us on our social media handles and do use the hashtag TimesLitFest.